Parents of Reddit, have you ever regretted what you named your child? If so, why?
Before I was born, my dad wanted to name me Harley after his favorite bike, but my mom insisted that I needed a Bible name. At age 4 I chose a nickname for myself because I couldn't pronounce this Bible name, but then as a teen I questioned my younger self's choice and explored new nicknames, including Harley. When I brought this idea to my dad thinking he'd be pleased, he got red in the face and said, "I had to sell that bike to put you in school. It's nothing to me now, just a random chunk of metal." You want to be named after a random chunk of metal? Fine. I'll call you Crankshaft, how about that? And he did, for like 2 years. I don't know where the regret is in that story, but it's somewhere. I'm sorry XAA12.
We were going to name our daughter Milena, but then I told my ob-gyn father what our decision was for the name. I kid you not, but he said, "That is a terrible name. You will regret it. It is very close to the medical term Melena, and that means bloody tarry stools. You don't want me to link her name with poop for her whole life, do you?" So needless to say, Milena was out.
My parents couldn't agree on a name, so they agreed that my dad would get to name me if I was a boy, and my mom would name me if I was a girl. My dad, in all his greatness, settled on Wolfman Jack. Yeah, thank God I was born a girl. Thanks, Mom. Well, I don't think they regret it or care, but my name is Latina and I'm black. I always get asked about it and have to explain that it was completely arbitrary and I speak no Spanish. Edit. To clarify, I'm not saying I have a Latin name, my name is literally the word Latina.
My wife and I don't like all the family politics of naming the children. Someone's going to get bent out of shape because one family member got used and not another. So, we racked our brains to agree on a name not used on either side of the family. Didn't announce the name until the birth. Neither my mother or father said anything for a year. Then, one day they casually mentioned the name of my uncle's first son that I wasn't even aware of. He had died at only 6 weeks old, 15 years before I was born. I don't know that I regret the name of my son. But, it would have been crossed off the list of contenders had I known.
I knew an Annalise once, and when she was 8, they realized that the unique spelling of her name was a popular personal lubricant.
There was a girl in my elementary school named Nida Butt. I suppose it's hard to come up with a good name ending in butt, but Nida would not have been my top pick. I was going to be named Osama, thank God I was born in 2002.
I named my daughter Karen. Thanks, Internet.
I'm named after a song. It was also in the top 5 names for the decade in which I was born. Pretty sure they started to regret it the first time there were more than 5 kids sharing my name in my class.
My friend's name is Sephora, and she was named that before the popular makeup company Sephora got big. It's the Greek version of the biblical name Zipporah, Moses' wife.
My name is Jessica, which is the name my dad wanted. Mom wanted to name me Clarissa. I was born early and they hadn't settled on a name. A nurse suggested combining them. They seriously considered naming me Clarisica. They had even decided my nickname would be Rissy. I am so glad Mom decided Jessica was fine. I never would have forgiven them. My dad regrets my name. He wishes he had named me after his father. When my parents had me, both his younger brothers were engaged, so he figured they'll probably have sons and name him after their dad. Well, one had 2 sons and the other had 1. None of them named after my grandfather. My dad regrets picking the name he preferred and has said, "If I could go back in time, I would name you Thomas."
I was almost named Luke Sky. One guess as what my last name is. I honestly probably wouldn't have minded much, I already took on a lot of flack in school anyway.
I'm the Sun. My father regrets the name he gave me, because it's nearly identical to his name. Only difference is the middle name, initial, which rarely shows up on paperwork. So almost any time that either of us goes to do any paperwork or sign up for something, we run into issues involving our nearly identical names. For example, we both face roughly a 20-minute delay when trying to vote because they mix up which of us is which. I receive his Best Buy receipts. He gets packages and mail meant for me and I for him. His credit card routinely pops up on my credit report, my student loan routinely pops up on his.
As far as I know, my parents don't regret my name, but it's an odd situation. I was their firstborn, and my dad wanted me to be named Jerry, after himself. But we have 7 other Jerrys in my family. So they named me Jerry, but they decided, from birth, that I would go by Caleb, my middle name. I don't mind, because I don't like the name Jerry. But it makes things confusing at work, cause I don't like to explain to everyone that I prefer to go by my middle name. So I usually just go by my first name at work. My mom wanted to name me Maggie May or Bradleyna. She went a completely different way after my godmother threatened her.
My mom went to school with a girl named Pennis, but everyone called her Penny. I don't mind my son's name, but I regret that I didn't stand my ground and insist that his middle name be my great-grandpa's name. I really wanted to honor my OPA, who was a big part of my life, and my ex insisted it was too German and insisted he have a good Irish name and allowed my alternative. My ex is like a quarter Irish through his grandma that he never met. Meanwhile, my German dad literally didn't speak English till he was 7, and my mom is German, and I grew up in a household where German was spoken too, but go off, I guess.
We gave my son the middle name of Danger, thinking it would be badass when he was a high school QB, or make him look cool at college parties. But now that he's a teenager, I think it's safe to say that if my son ever even attends a football game, it will be because he's playing the tuba there. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but probably wouldn't associate the middle name Danger for someone on marching band.
Not me, but my significant other teaches 2 sisters named Princess with their middle name as the differentiator. If they haven't regretted it, they will when both princesses grow up, I hope. Gulp.
Well, I had my first son and named him Walter Jr. But then I had my second son and he better exemplified the Walter name, so I named him Walter Jr. and switched the first son to Andrew, which I found in a baby name book.
I always let my kids name themselves when they turn 5. Some people complain, but I can tell you that my son Superman is doing fantastically.
If I had been a boy, Dad planned to name me Luke, in honor of his mother getting diagnosed with leukemia that year. So thankful I am female. Of course, they still let my sister name me, who was 3 at the time.
I'm just here to see how many Khaleesi posts there are.
My parents wanted to name me Josephina. Thank gosh they didn't. My dad ended up suggesting a different name, and that's how I got named after my mom's pet caterpillar she had as a child. They didn't regret that one.
Lol, I'm not a parent, but my dad was going to make me Arizona Corona. I'm very thankful he didn't name me that, considering the times.
Had a friend named Gaylord. Bless his soul.
I named one of my kids a name that I knew from childhood, but as French. Because I am so used to the name, it didn't occur to me that everyone is going to mispronounce it for the rest of their life.
There used to be 7 kids named Aiden in my grade, but all were spelled differently, or had different last names, until an 8th Aiden showed up with the same last name and spelling as another kid in the same grade. We called him New Kid for the rest of the year.
Didn't anticipate spelling her name every single time you need an appointment, prescription. It's a strange but known spelling of a common name. Used at television, fashion, and an author with it. Like Sierra for Sierra kind of difference. I was also unaware of how people butcher my now husband's last name, German but short. We weren't married at the time. So this kid has to spell out her first and last names every single time, usually twice. She just starts spelling now versus saying then spelling because people still get it wrong.
My mom regrets my name. They thought I was going to be a boy, and had a boy's name picked out. I arrived, very much not a boy, after 12 hours of labor and no epidural. Sorry, Mom. She told my dad to just pick a name, so he named me after his sister. My mom and my aunt don't like each other. At all. Dad did not get naming privileges for my siblings, and Mom made sure to pick one name for each gender well before they arrived.
I was almost named Gertrude or Tode, pronounced Toad, and my brother was almost named Jedediah or Hartzell.
IDK if my parents regretted my name, but like. They named me after a baseball player and were hoping I'd be an athlete. I turned out to be super involved in high school marching and concert band instead. I'm not interested in sports, not my thing. My friend was named after the Castlevania character Alucard. My parents knew before they even started having kids that they wanted to have a son named Michael. I ended up being that son. Problem was, they had 3 miscarriages before their first child, and then they had 3 daughters before they had me. With all the not a son they kept having, I think they probably started to get discouraged that they would never have a son. So by the time their 3rd daughter was born, they named her Michelle. And then they had another kid and, boom, hey look at that, it's a boy. Even though they had already named my sister Michelle, they committed to their original desire and gave me the name Michael. I doubt my parents regret the names they gave us, necessarily. They never really talk about it and aren't super hung up on stuff you can't control anyway. But I imagine my sister's name might have been different if she had been born after me.
Not a parent, but there was this girl who used to be my neighbor. Her name was Cake, pronounced cake but spelt like cake and Kate mixed together. Her brother was named Preston, pronounced Preston. Kinda makes me wonder if their parents went to school like damn.
I think my parents do. They named me after a guy who was my dad's best friend at the time. A year or two later they had a huge falling out and 30+ years later haven't spoken since. Hi, the child here. My birth mom named me Sabrina, after her favorite TV show, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. You can bet that when a certain someone from my middle school that for some reason absolutely hates me found out, he started calling me Sabrina the Teenage Bitch. I don't go by Sabrina at all, by the way. I got it wrong the first time. She likes her new name much better now.
My mum told me that when she was in nursing school, she had a classmate named Tess whose last name was Tickle. I think that's how it's spelt. I know it's hard to find a good name to go with a last name that's pronounced the same as Tickle, but that's got to be the worst choice to go with.
I had a very weird first name, that was also extremely close to my mom's name, and a very common middle name. My mom wanted my middle name to be my first name. She's told me many times she regrets that it wasn't. At age 11 I decided to go by a nickname for my middle name. At 18 I legally changed my name to what had been my middle name. Wish mom had argued harder for it to be my first name, would have saved me an argument with the person reading names at my high school graduation, among other things.
You see, I was a huge fan of House of Cards.
Isis. Back when it was just an Egyptian goddess 7 years ago. We don't yell her name out in public anymore.
Alright, perhaps Michael Litterus wasn't the best name for the lad.
My son died 8 times in his first 24 hours of life. Named him Phoenix. No regrets.
Yup. Named him, literally rolled out of the operating room and a nurse said she just named her kid that name. It fucking exploded and now it's everywhere. My first name was the most common the year I was born and I hated it and never wanted that for my kids. My maiden name was 13 letters and can barely be pronounced, so didn't want to go that route either. Easy to spell, easy to say, not common, that was all I asked. And I failed. Edit, typos. I know a girl who had a baby around 18 months ago with her husband, he's Mexican, and they named their child Corona. Luckily my mother stopped quite a few bad names proposed by my father, but the worst one had to be when she proposed Levi, but he insisted that Garrett be my middle name if that was the case. For those uninformed in the tobacco industry, Levi Garrett's is a chewing tobacco brand. My father was well aware of this.